It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of macrame cord, but the big drawback to it is it's kind of hard to work with. It gives you a hand workout, and sometimes you don't want that. So I was perusing Amazon the other day, and I found myself down a macrame cord rabbit hole, but what I found was something that I think could be the solution to the macrame cord conundrum that I have been facing. 2mm macrame cord. At least I think that's what this is. So my theory is that this macrame cord will be easier to crochet with than the 3mm macrame cord I'm used to working with. So I want to test that theory on one of my coaster patterns that I think is really great, but kind of just needs, it just needs macrame cord. Like that's the answer. I think we have just found what we have been looking for. Look at how it has really good drape to it. I'm pretty impressed overall. So these coasters call for a 4mm crochet hook. I'm gonna try that, but I might end up going up a hook size with this. We'll see. We'll just see how it works out. So we start with 4 chains, and this will be the telltale of whether or not this hook will work. This might be too small of a hook size. One way you can tell if it's too small of a hook size, obviously if it just keeps falling off of your needle, but also if you have a lot of issues with it splitting, that can also be an indication that your hook size is a little bit too small. So we have our ring here in the center, and this will be the point that we always come back to when we're finished with our row. And so we'll add on to it around, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean. I personally like the look of how things look when you crochet in the back bump of the chain. So this first row, we're just working with slip stitches, but yeah, back bump only, slip stitch. Ooh. I really might need to switch to a 4.5. We're gonna power through. It's not impossible. It's just, I really gotta pay attention to what I'm doing. Especially with slip stitches, you know, they're kind of hard to work anyways. And then when you're using a questionable hook size, it just makes it that much more tedious. Ooh, this is gonna look so cool. I'm really excited about this. And then the next thing we'll do is slip stitch in the center of this ring. So yeah, the ring in the middle is really just a foundation that the row's attached to. So that's how that works. I don't know, first impressions, pretty good. I think this might actually work. I started out only mildly excited about this, and it has just like been kicked up a notch. Chain 1 and turn the work, and this, it's super fiddly, right? Turn it just like this so you can work in the opposite side of your row, and then in the back loops only is where we'll work the next few stitches. But there's a stitch combo here that I do not have memorized, so pardon me while I look at my pattern. So we're not counting the slip stitch here to the center of the ring as a stitch, so it's really tempting to work a stitch there, but we're actually not. We just have a combination that uses 10 stitches here. So first one is a half double crochet in the back loop only. Okay, a double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Again, the back loop only. Okay. I'm still really thinking maybe a 4.5 is the answer. 2 double crochets. Wait, 1 in the next 2, 2 in the next. By the way, I will have this pattern linked in the description below. You can see it for free on my website. Or if you want to support the channel, you know, you can buy the PDF from my shop. That way you can check off the stitches as you go and make your life a little bit easier. I think it's kind of fun that I haven't shown you the coaster first. So you're looking at this thinking, this is going to be a coaster? Like, are you crazy? Sometimes, yeah. But sometimes crazy ideas work, you know? This one came with like a ton of yarn too. I want to say this is more than a couple hundred yards. I have to go back and double check that. But yeah, a lot of times when you buy macrame cord, you have really small, or you don't have very much yardage when you get them. And that wasn't the case with this. Plus there are a lot of really good colors. A lot of times when you shop for macrame cord, you can really only pick from like basic colors. You have the classic like cream white color, and then, you know, maybe if you're lucky you get like a gray, a navy, and a black. But this one had a lot of cool colors. So I'll link this in the description too if you want to give this a try and you like to shop on Amazon. But obviously not required. Any 2mm macrame cord, as long as this works out, I think will do the trick. But overall, it's really not bad at all. It doesn't really feel like macrame cord. And then we don't forget our chain 1 and then turn again like this. Just working in the back loops only again, we will slip stitch. And this time, it's always best to crochet your slip stitches looser than you think they actually need to be, because, well, for one, we'll work into these stitches later on, and if they're really tight, you really just work against yourself, and it's so much harder than it needs to be. But also they look better. You know, I think a lot of us, or at least me, like for sure, because I crochet tight, it's like my nature. I do so because I feel like it's going to give me a neater result, but a lot of times when I relax and just loosen up, I find that it looks even better. There's obviously a fine line. You don't want to crochet so loose that your stitches look kind of wonky and all of that, but finding the balance of crocheting kind of loose or just maybe a little bit looser than you think you need, and like too loose, I think is a really good skill to acquire, or to master rather. I personally struggle a lot with treble crochet stitches looking right. I don't know. I'm never happy with how they look, but I can say that they actually look quite a bit neater with this macrame cord. It's almost like crocheting with like clay. I don't know. It just kind of does what you want it to do, and then it sticks there. I don't know. I'm totally sold on this stuff. Chain 1, then turn, and skip the slip stitch. We're not crocheting anything there at all, and we should have the same combination of stitches. So what was it? We had a half double crochet in the back loop, and then a double crochet in the next 2. You know, another thing to watch out for too, when you're doing something new for the first time, do you ever like crochet tighter and like, I don't know, just like with a tighter grip? It's kind of what happened with this first row, and I can already see that on the next row I'm really loosening up, which is probably a problem. Yeah, I think this is going to be perfect for these coasters. By the way, this pattern is not new. It's been on my website for a little while, but I've always thought that there was maybe something I could do to make it just a little bit better, you know? And I think this is it. Not that the original yarn that I used for it isn't great, because it is, but I think this is just overall going to be a little bit better. I feel like you can see a definite change in tension from when I started this to the last 2 rows. I'm either getting too comfortable crocheting with it, or I'm trying to overcompensate for the fact that this is a 4mm. It's a little bit small, and so I'm making my stitches noticeably bigger. And I say noticeably lightly. It's not that big of a difference, but it's kind of a big difference for me. I'm gonna try a 4.5 and see what that looks like. But don't worry, I'm not gonna make you watch me do all of that over again. Night and day difference with the half hook size, 1/2 millimeter size bigger, it makes it so much easier to crochet with. And as you can see, my stitches look neater as a result, and it's even potentially, and I ripped out the other one, but it does look maybe like it's a little bit smaller. I don't know. Experiment and see what feels the best for you. For a coaster like this, it doesn't matter if it's a teeny bit smaller or a teeny bit bigger, it's still going to function the same. So I would say for this pattern at least, use the hook size that works for you and that's easier for you to crochet with. Now I did notice as I was redoing it the second time and actually focusing on what I'm doing and not on what I'm trying to say, there was a little bit of an issue with the end here. You're supposed to have 2 empty stitches. And I totally goofed that before. I'm sorry. I'm really not good at talking and crocheting at the same time. So yeah, heads up there. You should have 2 stitches left unworked when you get finished with this row repeat here. You know, even though the distance that you have to travel here gets, it feels like it's getting bigger the more and more you add to it, I find that making the slip stitch to the center as tight as you possibly can actually does give you a better result. It does want to bubble up right now, but it actually flattens out quite well. Something about this cord, it's kind of like clay. It just does whatever I want it to. So although it does bubble up in the center, you can really push it out and it's not too bad. But I think overall you'll find that if you do it that way, it'll look better in the long run. But experiment with it. If you find that making them a little bit looser there initially, whoops, what am I doing here? Yeah, if you find that doing it a little bit looser looks better for just how you make your stitches, then yeah, I would say do what works best, you know? It's been a while since I have crocheted this coaster, and it's really hard to tell how big it's going to end up until you get like more than halfway through it. I'm kind of thinking this might end up being too big, but since the hook size is the one that's the most comfortable, that would mean the pattern will need to be adjusted to make a smaller one. I have to go with my gut on this one. Even though it's only about halfway done, this is more than 6 inches. And I think that's just too big for a coaster. So that means the pattern needs to change. And I'm cool with that. I am all for taking an older pattern and finding ways to make it better. And I think this is one of those instances where we can just make it a little bit better. I think we will probably want to... We definitely want to take off at least 3 stitches, but that's okay because I am totally experimenting here. I'm working out all of the details, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just follow the pattern and it'll be exactly the way you need it. It looks so much smaller, like drastically smaller, but I think it'll still work out. If I measure like the furthest point to about the middle, it's just a little bit bigger than 2.5, which theoretically should mean that it should be close to 5 inches in diameter when it's done, but we'll just have to see if that's actually the case. Nothing major changed though as far as the techniques go. You're still alternating the same 2 rows over and over. The biggest difference is like what stitches you're using and how many of them and where you're placing them. Now that's what I'm talking about. I don't think I could have gotten that any closer with using this 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. We need a total of 14 of these, if my memory serves me well. And then we have that joining step. So after working with this macrame cord for a couple of hours now, I can safely say that it is a lot easier to crochet with. than the 3mm version. Obviously, you know, chunky yarn is more of a workout than a thinner yarn, so I'm really not surprised there. But to compare it to something that you might be familiar with, it's real similar to working with a 100% cotton yarn. You know, there's not much, if any, stretch to it at all, except for, you know, the give that you have in the stitches. But it's not bad. It's a little bit more work, I guess, than using something, you know, really soft and stretchy, like maybe a wool yarn, but totally doable. Instead of using the back loop for the first 2 slip stitches, I used both loops of the stitch. And I think these two will match these two a lot better. And then I will try just pulling up on that and then using this to sew it together. Still catching both loops on like the most recent side, and then just catching one of the loops of the chain from that starting edge. But who knows if I will change my mind again. Super cute. Okay, so you know the other thing that you always see on coasters that you buy in the store? The little cork backing. Did you know you can buy this stuff? These are things that I didn't even realize. But you can get an entire pack of these little cork backings, and these are even self-adhesive. So these little guys are 4 inches in diameter. We probably could have gotten away with using a 5-inch, and that would have been better. There's a little bit of overhang, but this is what we have to work with. So I'm not trusting the adhesive, even though it does feel pretty sticky. I'm going to use my incredibly short hot glue gun and just put a big old blob of this on it. Much better. I really had no idea you could buy these. Such a good idea though. So it was really bothering me before, the overhang. There's a ton of overhang here. I really tried to ignore that and just be okay with it, but I wasn't. I went back and forth too on the size because this feels like it might be just a teeny bit too big for like a normal sized coaster. So I tinkered around with it some more and I came up with the smaller size that actually looks a lot better. The way the stitches came together, the way the join came together, all of the steps that you saw previously are the same. Just a different combination of stitches, and yeah, I overall like the result better. You know, I've never been disappointed with an experiment, and I think this one is no different. I'm really thrilled with this. I think I like both versions, but I'm leaning a little bit more toward the smaller one. I do have to say, I am really surprised at the cork back and how much of a difference that made. If nothing else, I hope this video inspires you to try crocheting with macrame cord. Every time that I've used it, the project has turned out even better than I could have imagined, but mainly because I'm using it on projects that I want to be sturdy, like baskets, for example. I crocheted a purse out of macrame cord and it's like one of my favorite bags. So yeah, I'll have the pattern linked in the description below if you want to support the channel or if you like to have a copy in hand to print or save for later. I'll have the PDF version linked below as well. B.Hooked.com is our shop for all of our PDF patterns. We have some PDF pattern bundles and we have some t-shirts if that's a little more your speed. I appreciate all of the support there. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one.